What's up guys, this is John with Skate Better, and today I'm going to attempt to teach you how to do a pop shove it. So I just want to get clarity as to what this tutorial is. I'm not going to be going over regular shove its. This is strictly the pop shove it. I love regular shove its, but I really wanted to focus on the pop shove it because for me personally it's a more fun trick. I think it looks cooler, and I don't think there's a lot of really great tutorials out there to teach you how to do a pop shove it. I think they give you the basic mechanics, but I wanted to do more of an in-depth tutorial of at least how it works for me, and then you guys can kind of play around with it. So we're gonna get into foot position, and then how to actually do the trick, the mechanics. And if you want to just skip to the end, I have included I think 4 or 5 slow motion videos of me doing a pop shove it that you can just watch over and over and over again if you want to get straight to that. So that will be at the very end of the video. So if you want that, just jump ahead, and yeah, we're gonna get started. All right, so let's talk about foot positioning. So foot positioning for a pop shove it will be different than a regular shove it because you're trying to generate pop. So in order to do that, if I was doing a regular shove it, my back foot would be over here, so I can use my toes around the tail to shove it back this way. But since I need to get some pop, if I move the tip of my left foot closer to the tail, it's gonna yield more pop in the board. So you can still do a shove it with your foot here, but what's gonna happen is the board is gonna spin more level and it's not gonna get as high, as opposed to if I pop it here, I'm gonna get a lot more yield out of my pop. The board's probably gonna come up higher like this, but it's gonna result in a loftier pop shove it. And the second thing is you want your back foot a little bit, toes towards, a little bit outwards. Same thing with the front foot. Front foot, your toes are gonna be a little bit outwards, and you don't need to have your whole foot on the board. If you have your whole foot on the board like this, or it's too far to the front of the board, it's gonna limit the height of the pop shove it, and it's also gonna be really challenging to get that foot out of the way. So like one of the most important things in a pop shove it is your front foot has to get out of the way, like crazy out of the way. So when you're lifting the board to do the shove it, if your foot is here, there's a lot that can go wrong. But if you move it back just a little bit more like this, or a little bit lower, it's a lot easier to get that foot out of the way once the board starts its rotation. So most pros have it somewhere around here. Some people put it way over here or down here just to make it even easier for it to get out of the way for them. But most importantly is you do want it angled a little bit. If it's too far forward like this, you're probably gonna end up pushing the board, which is not what you want to happen. You don't want the front foot to really do anything other than basically get the heck out of the way. And then your back foot is actually what's causing the board to pop. So just remember, like ball of your foot somewhere like right around here, maybe a little bit further over, like right in this corner, anywhere over there. So like if this is the center, my pressure is like right in this little zone right here. And then the front of your foot, oops, and then the front of your foot is somewhere here. So once again, it's not like a kick flip where it's like maybe over here, but it's comfortable on the board and you're set up for that pop motion. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about like what actually happens when you do a pop shove it, and like really like what needs to happen with your feet when you do a pop shove it. So when you're doing this pop shove it, you got your feet set up here, right? And I think the common mistake that people make is they think that they can just like lift this foot and slam this foot down at the same time and the board's gonna turn. And like that's actually not what happens at all. When you go to do that, if you try to do it at the same time, you're probably gonna end up flipping the board. The board will probably end up flipping this way. You can't have your front foot really in contact with the board at all when it's spinning. So what's gonna happen is your back foot is gonna basically press down and behind you. So this back foot is gonna pop behind you like this. So like what it actually looks like is the foot is coming down like that. So like let's say like, this is great, we have lines on the floor. We're gonna use these lines. So you come a little closer. So if this is my line that I'm referencing, right? My foot is gonna start to pop and that board is gonna already start turning before I pop. And then what's gonna happen is right around here is when the board is actually gonna make contact with the ground. And I don't need to do this. I don't need to like scoot my foot back. All I need to do is pop down and a little bit behind me, like this. So like my ankle is really doing the pop. So it's not like a pop and then scrape, which is kind of like a front side shove it. And it's more of just like it goes down right at the angle. So it's not so much of a scoop like this as it's just an angled pop like that. So what's gonna actually make this trick work for you is really getting your front foot out of the way. Like the back foot isn't where people get into trouble, it's their front foot. And like what needs to happen is your front foot actually needs to be lifting up before that back foot even hits, before that back ball of the foot even hits the ground. So like, I think a lot of people miss this step when they're giving the tutorial, and they're like, yeah, bro, just like, shove your back foot down and then get your front foot out of the way. And like, actually it's the opposite. Like, your front foot gets out of the way a split second before the trick happens, before the pop happens. So like, that's where people go wrong in this trick. So what does that mean? That means that like, while I'm popping up like this, my front foot is already lifting before my back foot is hitting the ground. And by the time my back foot pops, my foot's off the board. My foot is out of the way. So like, the board is already here. My foot is somewhere like this. It's just basically out of the way. And that board's gonna rotate, and my front foot needs to stay kind of in front of me so that when the board comes around, I can catch it with the front foot. So like, I think the other mistake a lot of people make is they pop the board and they just like bring their both legs up in like this really high and kind of wait. And really, like, you need to have that front foot after it pops, like waiting out here to catch that board. Otherwise, it's either gonna over-rotate or it's gonna hit you in the shin and it's really gonna hurt. So remember, the key, and like, you can show me for this, like the key to this trick is the timing of your front foot lifting before your back tail hits the ground. It doesn't happen at the same time. It's not like an ollie where it's like, I like snap and slide. It's like, no, the front foot lifts first, then the back foot snaps behind you, but it happens like that. Like, it happens in like a split second. And you can watch videos of people, like when they're doing the trick, their front foot is like already basically out of the way. So the other thing that needs to make sense for the mechanics of this trick to work, for me anyway, is like, if I'm doing this trick standing still, it's not really much of a big deal. But you have to understand like what a fulcrum is, and like, or what an axis point is. So like, that's the point at which the board is gonna rotate around for the trick to work for you. And in this trick, the axis point is like right here. So I need my weight, instead of being like completely centered over the board, my weight actually needs to be centered like right around here, like in this little space. So I find like when I'm doing the trick, I'm actually almost leaning back just a little bit. So what happens is like, when I snap that board back, my front foot's out of the way. I'm still centered over the board in a way that I can catch it. As opposed to like, if I'm just centered here, I find that when I go to pop the trick, if I'm not leaning back, the board kind of ends up way behind me. So once again, this is just something that works for me, but I do like lean a little bit more towards the back side of my board when I'm doing this trick, and I find it helps a lot with keeping the board underneath you when you're gonna do a high pop. If you're not gonna do as high of a pop, it really doesn't matter that much, but if you're gonna pop high, remember that nose is coming up really high. So once again, the board, like the area that I have to control is here, as opposed to if it's a little bit lower, I have a little bit of a wider area to control. So once again, if you're gonna pop it high, my recommendation is, experiment with your weight a little bit, leaning a little bit back. Maybe you do lean a little bit forward. Maybe it's popping out in front of you. I don't feel like that happens, but play around with your weight distribution a little bit and see if that helps. All right, guys, so I know that was a lot of information, and I'm doing the last piece over in my car because I realized there were two things that I didn't hit on. The first thing is you got to experiment with the trick. So I have different femurs, different hips, different body than you do, different body than the pros do, and your body mechanics are going to work differently. So it's important to really play around with your feet, play around with your weight. All those things are going to change a little bit to help you get a better mechanical advantage, is ultimately what it's going to come down to when you're doing this trick. So just don't forget to play around with it. Just because you watch something online or someone online do it one way doesn't mean that's the best way to do it for you. And number two is one more weight distribution thing that I didn't touch on. I think it's important to mention that when you pop shove it, I'm goofy footed, so my right foot is forward, so my left foot is back. So when I'm riding forward, let's just say like I'm looking to the left, I'm looking towards my toes, the board has a tendency to pop in the direction of your toes when you're doing a pop shove it, meaning that like it's gonna jump out about 6 inches in front of your toes. So to anticipate that, what works for me is I found myself leading a little bit more over my toes than I normally would in anticipation of that happening. The other thing that you can do to offset it that a lot of pros do is they start turning their board to the right a little bit, and then when they pop it, it looks like it's going straight, but really the board will kind of like, so like they'll start to turn, like say like you pop the shove it ends up over here. They'll start turning their board this way before they pop the shove it to give them more of an advantage. So it looks like they're kind of back on that straight line when really they're kind of still going from here to here. But you can play around with that
play around with that as well. So it would be like I would be leaning to my right and then pop the shove it, and then it would end up kind of more centered. So that's just one more thing you can play around with. And that's pretty much all I got. I hope you guys like this video. Here are those slow-mo clips I was talking about. If you did like it, please subscribe. And yeah, have a good sesh.